Every week we take on a different topic, and this week I'm digging in a little deeper into Mount Etna. And Mount Etna is something that we had the great pleasure of visiting just about a year ago. Really a special visit. I'd never been there before. I had a lot to learn, a lot to see. And man, there was a lot to learn and a lot to see. It was a beautiful part of Italy. I've traveled pretty extensively in and around Italy, and I saw some magnificent things. But wow, Mount Etna has it all. And so does Sicily, basically. We covered most of the island, and we did so in a really organized fashion, staying at some wonderful properties and eating some great meals with some top producers, seeing the sights. We actually hiked up the side of Mount Etna. We learned so much about the history. And, this is a place that had been ruled and conquered by so many different civilizations throughout time, and lots of little different micro influences. Really a fascinating place. I'm going to not share that because that is protected. I'm gonna make sure I get a different show up there. There we go. Always allowed to share stuff that is written by the wine tourism organizations, so I'm going to stick to that. But here's a fantastic view. We were standing right in the amphitheater, looking out through the wall of the amphitheater at the volcano, the largest volcano in Europe. Largest active volcano, I guess, is the qualifier, but it is massive, and it really does create like an entire ecosystem. And as you can see that picture in the background, they call that they say that the volcano is breathing. And while we were there, it was breathing. And we had some little tremors here and there, and the locals just think of it as a normal occurrence. Shortly after we left, they had a little larger breath, and the airport closed. But you can see here on the map of Sicily, got two more people to let in here. Hi, guys. Welcome, welcome. You can see here, this is where we're at. We are basically looking kind of due east towards the mainland, as we look at the very bottom of the boot of Italy over here. And it's quite interesting to think about the fact that they have two airports and probably need two airports, because most of the time the airport up in this area is closed because of the volcano. So they have another one over here, and you could fly into either one. Each airport's about 4 hours apart, however. So you need to plan accordingly and be flexible and not be in a hurry. But that is a little look at the island. Of course, there are so many different parts of Sicily to appreciate. And we did. We took a little journey. We started off over here and stayed in this beautiful place and went all the way around the island and ended up over here before our group flew up back out through the airport. And lots of things to see. Amazing artifacts that have been discovered from past civilizations, past eras. Yeah, so we're going to spend our day today talking about the wines off of Mount Etna, which is really young soils off the volcano. They are black, and it's something to behold as you walk up the side of the volcano and see this black pebbles. They looks like it's almost like hell on earth. And the only thing that's growing out of this very fresh young soil are these stark white trees. And I just couldn't imagine, the personality that Mother Nature and God has to have to be able to create such black soils and white trees right in this really amazing spot. And there's so much history that's rolled through there. When we were on the side of Mount Etna, we actually were taken into these fissures, these little teeny tubes of where the lava once flowed and then stopped. It created this really amazing like artery. And back in the day, they would store snow in these kind of all hollowed out veins because they were so well insulated from the heat. Ironic, right? And they would sell this ice and snow all over the place from Sicily. They'd take it and sell it as a premium product. So really was startled to learn that, see that, understand that. Pretty interesting. Here's another cool picture. It really is like walking on the surface of the moon or Mars. It's just has really not much growing or moving or signs of life are few and far between out there, and it's vast. I mean, it is cavernous and vast. Now, as you get further away from where the volcano is really active, we're talking about a large amount of land, lots of slope, perfect things for growing grapes in these very mineral rich soils. Um, can be quite productive for a lot of different crops, but they started planting a couple of specific grape varieties on Mount Etna, and some of these vines are now quite old. We have 80-plus-year-old vines on the side of the volcano. And so most of the vines and the wine that's coming from it is from a grape called Nerello Mascalese, which you can see right here. There's also another Nerello variety called Nerello Cappuccio. And many of the wines that are grown have a little Nerello Cappuccio. They could be a blend. They call them Etna Rosso or Etna Bianco, the white wines made from a grape called Carricante. And there's some other varieties that can also kind of slip in there in small amounts, but Carricante is the important grape, as Nerello Mascalese is the important grape to the Etna Rosso and the core wines of the area. And the best versions are probably pure Carricante or pure Nerello Mascalese. Now, this part of the world has been a solution for many phases of our wine evolution. We even visited, the ancient area that was responsible for Marsala. And there's a lot of grape varieties planted all over Sicily that were considered Marsala grape varieties. And some of those were listed here, like Zabibo and Griconico and Grio and Insolia. These were all grapes that were basically commoditized, volumed, and turned into the wines known for that time. It was a very important category. And so it that evolved as like port wine was really an important wine category, and things evolved. And we kind of think, well, the dessert wines of yesterday have really become unimportant, but they really are the shoulders that we're standing on. And they were a wine style that we could make and produce and distribute, and that would have shelf life and be able to persevere the challenges of moving wine around without losing all of their qualities. And so that's why those wines were really important, and that's what the foundation is that great wine was built on. Today, Marsala wine is so misunderstood. I think most people think it's a cooking wine. And just a little trivia fact, did you know when they sell it as cooking wine, they actually put a little salt in it? And that's not for cooking, that's to keep the chefs from drinking it. So it was really kind of a, hey, let's cost control this Marsala wine. Let's put a little salt in there. Otherwise, Fernando's going to get a little hammered in the kitchen. So they put a little salt in the wine to keep it unconsumable. So I'm now going to go into my PowerPoint and move past the protected map and get back into the information and get into wine number one, because we're all here to taste some great wines of Sicily. We've got 6 of them tonight. And as we talked about, there's the names of the grape varieties: Nerello Mascalese, little Nerello Carpuccio, a little Carricante. And so there are pre-phylloxera vineyards over 150 years old on Etna. And I'm not sure if all these grape varieties were the original plantings on Etna, but a lot of the old material has been grafted over to just these grape varieties. And so that's pretty cool. And when you think of the volcanic soils, maybe they're not capable of allowing phylloxera to survive there yet. So that's probably what's going on. The same thing has happened up in Mendoza in Argentina, an elevation. Their soils haven't seen phylloxera yet. There's a lot of thought about that. Might be the minerality of the soil or the lack of minerality or lack of particular minerals that's keeping that root louse away. It's a little teeny louse that will just eat all the vines and kill off the vineyards. And that's why many wine societies have had to replant over time. And very important kind of benchmark is that most of that happened back in the late 1880s, early 1890s. That's when phylloxera was really devastating Europe. Let's go into wine number one. This is from, and we're going to talk about the relationship between price and quality a lot today. There are wines from Sicily that are quite affordable and quite lovely. And we're going to climb the financial chain and taste some things a little bit more expensive and a little bit more expensive after that. We've got 3 whites and 3 reds. And this is from one of the more important, significant producers in Etna, the Etna growing area. The Benanti family, been there for a long time. They've been well positioned for a long time, well represented, and they are a brand. They're a strong brand, and got that early start, got distributed all over the world. And this is a category that 20 years ago, to think that you would be selling an Etna Rosso or an Etna Bianco somewhere just didn't happen. No way. It's really a recent phenomenon, but these guys have been at it for a long time. So when it did finally take hold and people said, hey, we want to really embrace this, Benanti just exploded. And they are in a really good position to do that. End of the 1800s, Giuseppe Benanti, fantastic names. Really was one of the pioneers of production. And so when we visited Benanti, we got to meet the current generation of Benantis. They have quite a tasting room operation. Lots of people flocking there. In fact, we were standing right next to that tree behind that tasting room right there. Um, and that's where we had our little tasting. Great hillside. You can see some of the types of ideas they have for viticulture. Things are definitely done in particular ways. Many of the vineyards are blocks. Um, Many of them are trellised and kind of trained up and organized in particular ways. Let me get the screen to move. Give me get rid of that. So pale yellow color with bright greenish hints. The nose is intense and delicate with hints of apple. The palate is dry with mineral and pleasant acidity. Salinity, keyword. Um, this is Carricante, and this is done in the form of a Etna Bianco. So that the grape varieties can allow for a little variation, but this one is 100% Carricante. And you can almost close your eyes and think about being on an island. Fish is everything on this island. It is the emphasis of the cuisine. Um, it is, you can smell the sea in the air because it is everywhere. And you've got this incredible minerality of the volcano. And the soils are really mineral rich, especially in things like magnesium. And so this wine is really taking me there immediately, even though this is quite a value version. It does a great job. Trying to get rid of my annotation and move to the next slide. Help me out there. Go. Check out this vineyard look. I can remember standing right here, and they use these wood canes to help the vines, the vineyards. They're not trained and trellised. They are literally tied to these wooden sticks, grown straight up, no training or trellising, just bush type of vines typically. The cellars have all the typical bells and whistles. We're going to see some old wine cellars, though, the way they used to make wine. And it's so interesting because there's a lot of these old winemaking facilities that are still there, kind of like artifacts, and they love to talk about them. Let's take a look a little deeper on this Benanti. We'll click into my website, see a couple comments here. I'm not sure if there's anything fresh that we haven't already said, but $28 is where we're going to start out. I I like these wines because they are so different. They definitely have um, a nose that takes us to a Mediterranean spot where you can smell things like green olive. Um, you got certainly the white wine fruits like apple pear, but you can really smell some of that chaparral, some of that minerality, that saltiness. And just really imagine, being in a seafood restaurant and what type of wine would penetrate and embrace some of the, olive oil everywhere. You're going to have, they, they, they have, I was surprised to find how much potato we actually saw down there, but there was also, pastas and different things. It's quite a eclectic mix of foods that some typical to Italy and some you're like, hmm. But light, crisp, refreshing. This is probably a wine that, or a version of this wine that we're going to try that you may see by the glass at some seafood restaurants, as it is in that attractive, probably 18 to $20 a glass type of a price range. And it's an important wine. It's a leader for the category, kind of the ambassador, if you will. And Benanti is that brand. All right, we're going to move forward into wine number two and open it up for questions if you have any. Thank you guys for joining me again. Some of you can't, just getting started. That first wine's pretty necessary sometimes, so I wanted to get in there and get us started. Thinking Carricante, that's what we're tasting right now. This is a super important grape variety for this zone. I'm going to say something. I think I love the red wines, but I think Carricante could be more important than the red. Could be. I'm not saying it is. A lot of people just prefer to drink red wines, but um, in the world of wine, we may have, a red wine for almost every purpose, and maybe finding that landing strip for the red from Etna is a little harder to do than what we're going to find for the white. Red wine with fish isn't as popular. White wine with fish, this is absolutely going to be a very popular combination and really a great solution. It can be magnificent to do something like this with the right cuisine. You think of your fish with the caper berries and lemon and everything that just goes so perfectly with these wines, herbs. Wine number two, really a step into a more dynamic, bold, and I'll say very Planeta direction, because they really have done something here that's special, unique, and maybe they're the only ones that can kind of get away with this because Planeta are such innovators. They really were like the ballerinas, the gymnasts of the wine world for the past 40, 50 years. They were, when the world was looking for wine, Planeta planted grapes and gave the world wine. I remember in the 1990s getting these massive, ripe, rich, unique, uh, tasty wines from Sicily that were basically filling the gaps. And, we would run out of wine to sell in California. And so here comes a beautiful Sicilian Chardonnay. How about a Sicilian Merlot? How about a Sicilian Cabernet? All these grape varieties were kind of, let's get it going, because the weather there. I mean, if you were a grape, you would be so happy being in Sicily. The sun, the where it's at as opposed to the equator, the warmth, um, great mineral and resources, water. It's a wonderful place to grow grapes. Planeta was the solution for that. And then at the same time, they started to specialize in some of the indigenous grape varieties. They've spread all over the island. They have multiple winemaking facilities. They're a fairly significant producer as far as size, but I think over time they have really kind of doubled down, maybe even quadrupled down on quality over size, and cut that size down, but really elevated quality as their path. And I think that the days of quantity wines from Sicily are not necessarily over, but even our own like bias about Sicily, because I can tell you in the 1990s, Sicilian wines were like, it's probably something that's made for being cheap. That's not the case anymore. These are absolutely trying to be champions, and they have spread their wings at Planeta and produced they produce wines on Etna. They produce wines in Noto and Victoria, Menfi. They have different product lines. They have come to the marketplace with the can do, we're going to get it done mentality. They are distributed everywhere and they do a really good job with their wines. And so their reputation is very good. They've got such amazing resources and they really take advantage of the terroir. You know, this if you could just imagine the type of wine that comes off of a vineyard that's literally touching the ocean, growing right on top of the limestone, the sand, the wind, that oceanic influence. Now, there's a little something else special about this wine. We'll get there in a second. Explosion of aromas, ripe fruits, aromatics, floral. These are the kind of words to describe this. Parker 94 points on this wine. Um, Slightly evolved, I think, is a great first point. As I poured it in the glass, you saw the color coming right into the wine. This is a 2018. They do get a little bit of oxidation going on. About line 4 gave away my little tease. 10% touch of Riesling. Um, I mean, I was like, Riesling? Who thought of that? But Carricante Riesling gives it that really fun little tart, refreshing edge that is pretty magic with food and really it is a successful blend. This is not something to be thinking is just kind of an anomaly. This is a real serious wine that has penetrated the top restaurants of the world. And that little 10% Riesling, people are like, yeah, I really like that little twist, that little citrusy lift that we get there that kind of creates a little mouthfeel, a little crunchiness. And that nose, that just that little bit of almost like gasoline, that little petroleum hint on the tip of the nose. It's really fun. We visited Planeta and we had a really cool tour of the facility. Um, this is about $50 a bottle and has lots of potential to age. You do have to enjoy what's going on with it now to see how it could go a little further and get a little bit more interesting, a little bit more mineral, a little more smoky, a little bit more dried floral. There's a lot of things that could go, a lot of directions this wine can continue to build on. And it's really a fun wine. Like I said, with a coursed out meal, this is sensational stuff. We're going to move into wine number 3. This is when you know the wine category is about to take fire. It's when Angelo Gaja, Piedmont's success story, says, you know what? We're going to buy a huge vineyard in Mount Etna. And that's what happened. And this is Idda. So 2015, um, the Gaja family, I think the story goes that they were there on vacation and they've met the Grazi family and decided to do a joint venture. And that's how they got their toes wet. They continue to invest. They now own a very significant vineyard site. The property looks very Gaia-esque, and it is a part of this evolving story. And this is a large appellation that has really started to get some added definition. We're going to see some appellations come around, but this hasn't even got a DOC yet. So that's where we're at in the curve. I'd say, 5 years from now, we're going to have a Etna DOC, and then we'll start looking at some DOCGs. And that's where this is going to evolve. This is like the very beginning steps. This wine shows wisteria, cantaloupe, marzipan, clear citrus notes. Hydrocarbon hints pop up when pop up to follow on the nose. This wine is complex with firm texture, minerality, and vibrant acidity. Opens on the palate with peach, passion fruit, papaya notes. The oak is well integrated and the finish is crisp and lingering. No Riesling in this effort. This is a look at the Gaia facility here. I've taken a group to Piedmont. I'll be taking a group to Piedmont this November, and we may actually visit the Gaia facility in Barbaresco. We're still working on that part. But here's the Gaia facility in Mount Etna. You can see the different, it's almost like facets of a diamond. The way the vineyards are angled, parsed, blocked, and there's all kinds of ideas here. And look at the row orientations. Some are going this way, some are going that way. Lots of different ideas and things that they're still potentially in the tryout phase. Of course, the Gaia cellar looks meticulous, looks like it was built 1,000 years ago, but may actually be an older cellar that they've charmed up. Put these massive tanks in. It cost a fortune. Here's Gaia at 69. So we had 29, 49, and $69. This wine is on its way to it's gonna be $100 sooner than it's gonna be 50. This is absolutely a wine that's growing in price point. Each vintage that comes out, the price jumps pretty significantly. This will be the leader. And I would say, you know, you can pick your favorites of the different styles. I think Gaia's got that more richer, rounder, creamier style. And if you prefer that, great. If you like the little bit more of a angular, fun, zesty Planeta, or maybe you like the linearness, the cleanness, the crispness of the Benanti. But this kind of shows you the separation in price point. And these wines are really moving very well. So I think Gaia is going to be a safe bet. The ageability, by the way, really they love to serve these wines with considerable age. But what we're tasting today is a 2020, 4 years old, and certainly not. No one's going to tell you to hurry up and drink this, but it's absolutely in a good spot to pull the cork. That acidity is still very assertive. You can tell there's a lot of sunshine on the island. There's definitely some ripe notions, some really, I won't say elevated alcohol, but there's some alcohol, some ripeness to it. It's nothing underripe, and it's really an interesting bottle of wine. Love to hear some feedback. I'm going to take a couple questions. See what everybody's saying. There is a chat box. Thank you, Foster. Acidity, the balance. Yeah, this is definitely going to reward food in the tasting experience. Some wines are made to drink on their own. These are definitely made to drink with a meal and a great meal. Something very provoking, and and anywhere restaurant on Sicily, we went to some great restaurants. That you could definitely see this wine pairing with just about anything that's made locally. Tom, good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Always good to be here, Ian. I've had a few times when the wine hasn't arrived in time, and I've caught up with you with the Baja wines for the Mexican wines last week on Thursday night, et cetera, et cetera. But always good to be here live. Love Carricante. I think it's just a fabulous grape. Really enjoyed the Planeta though. That Riesling gave it something that was really interesting to taste.
Tom, did the wines make it to you?
They did. Yeah, yeah. Actually, the interesting thing is they arrived yesterday. I was going to send you a note congratulating you on on that. It relieved a lot of tension from me worrying about whether it was going to show up or not.
Well, we re-engaged with a different delivery service, which we had stopped doing business with. So they kind of cleaned up their act a little bit. And so GLS is doing a better job right now. But a year and a half ago, they weren't just coming late, they were just never showing up.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just had too much of that. And they do deliver in California overnight, whereas UPS ground takes 2 nights to get Northern California. And that was just not proving out very well for too many important
Yeah.
folks.
That's very nice. I head into the office on Wednesdays, and so because of the requirement for signature, it can be a little bit of a crapshoot what ends up happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, now
but
we should be
I
going for,
What's that?
we should be using GLS going forward for
Yeah,
event.
well, that'd be great. Wonderful. Thumbs up.
Well, here's the other thing too, is that they kind of got really aggressive with their prices and became more expensive than UPS as well.
Hmm.
That wasn't a good combination, poor quality service and higher prices. The prices came back down. So they're not cheap by any means. Maybe I should say probably UPS just kept getting more expensive.
Yeah,
Sure, that's more the case. But now we can deliver with GLS to Northern California for a few dollars less than UPS is willing to do it, at least at this current time. So it's all good. We're greenlit with them until further notice.
awesome. Well, cheers to that. Yeah,
I'm so glad it works for you.
yeah, thank you.
Well, really fun wines, some great things that are evolving, and I can really see, this category continuing to plan itself into the wine lists. I go to some really unique restaurants here in Los Angeles where we have so many great restaurants, and um, there's just a treasure trove of great fish destinations. But I recently saw some of these wines on a great little restaurant called Safi's, which is actually Eastern Mediterranean and connected to the Bevel restaurant in downtown LA. Really, really top-notch spot. And I saw Mount Etna wines on their list, and I said that this is a sign. This is something that we all need to be paying attention to because it's one of the hottest restaurants in LA. And they kind of also check a lot of boxes with natural wine. These wines, I mean, Mount Etna is like almost like a cult of natural wine beliefs and philosophies. Everything is natural on Mount Etna. They do not want to mess with Mother Nature. They're not going to do anything to move away from a natural ethos. So the kind of uh, the origins of natural wine and this movement could be traced to Mount Etna, um, because that's where things really, blossomed from. Food and the culture that they present there, very natural, very farm to table, very fresh, and that kind of lines up well with the whole fish culture. So delicious in downtown LA. If you were gonna take me to dinner, because I can't afford this restaurant, but it's called Yes. It's a fantastic fish destination. The chef is Japanese, and he really believes in the kind of the way the fish is killed. Is it because if you violently are killing fish, they tense up and they excrete certain emotionally driven things into their bloodstream, and the fish taste different. This is something I've been reading about, hearing about. You talk to any chef, and they'll they'll if they are in the fish world, they are definitely going to agree with that. And so this particular restaurant buys really significant pieces of seafood. The last time I ate there, they had just brought in something like a 900-pound tuna. And so the menu was going to feature tuna like 25 different ways. And they didn't have, you know, at the same time a swordfish and a salmon and a this and a that. It was tuna. And then the next week would be a different fish and a different menu. And that's what they're doing. It's very omakase, but there are significant number of add-ons. And if you could drink this wine with that Japanese idea of seafood, I think the umamis and everything will work really well with Carricante. And so that's something I would bring to Yes Restaurant on its way to getting a Michelin star for sure. We'll continue with our journey back on Mount Etna, having just finished wine number 3 from Angelo Gaja and the Gaja family. It's $70 for that bottle. We'll now go to the reds. Nerello Mascalese. This is a great producer, Nicosia. Um, they are capable of making some of the best wines in the region, and they're also capable of making some of the greatest values. They've been around since 1898. And there's a rigidity, there's a stubbornness, there's a pride. And you know that they're tough people if they've been doing business in Sicily since 1898. They probably rode the ups and the downs pretty hard. But from that has come amazing strength. And this is one of the better well-known brands. And if you go to visit, anybody to ask you where to visit, this is one of the wineries that comes up most often as a must go and see. You can see the old grape press sitting out in front of their building. Nerello Mascalese is not a grape that you could say, let's taste Nerello Mascalese from 10 different places on earth. I am sure that somebody right now is planting Nerello Mascalese in Oregon, um, possibly some slopes somewhere in California. Um, maybe they're gonna find some volcanoes in different parts of the world. Be fascinating to see Nerello from another location. But for the moment, this is a Mount Etna grape variety. And the comparisons to Nebbiolo are often made. Comparisons to grapes like Grenache, Pinot Noir. There's a softness, there's a thinness to the skin, there's an elegance, there's some silkiness. There's also this drilling Italian, can't get the Italian out of this wine. It's going to have acidity and some emotion. And I think this little wine, this little inexpensive wine that we're about to start with, does a really good job expressing the grape variety, expressing the place. By the way, the sunsets and the sunrises, I don't know which one's better, but just it, I have to hand it to Sicily. I've been to I spent a lot of time on Hawaii, beautiful island. I mean, sure, Hawaii's got some magnificent sights and stuff, but the emotion, the food, the culture, the smells, the sunsets, the sunrises, Sicily owns it. Just really, really a beautiful spot. Here's a really cool look at one of the old winemaking facilities. These facilities and you could walk into 10, 15 different wineries that have, it looked like they're all made by the same people, the same architecture, the same kind of like, wow, look at that big old tree that's being used like a corkscrew to pull down, push down some weight and extract the fruit, the juices from this fruit. And a lot of it was maybe inspired by other parts of the world, but there's something very unique to this style of winemaking facility that's very Sicilian. And there was a period of time where a lot of these producers were not able to make wine, and they kind of put these old winemaking facilities aside, and now some of the young generations playing around with some of this old um, infrastructure because they really like the naturalness of it, the fact that they're not using machines and chemicals and they're things that they've made with their own hands. So that this kind of that old school idea. In Sicily, it's not thought to be acceptable to use some of these places, but some of the younger generations are going to challenge that idea and try to revive this old culture. $20 for our first Nerello Mascalese. This is a 2020. Let's take a look at it. Lots of baking spices. Almost smell some like baked fruits, sunburnt, a little bit of that minerality, that volcanic minerality kind of shining through. I'm not gonna spit that. There's like a very savory characteristic here as well. Um, Stewed meats, herb salad. Um, it's tender, it's soft, it's pretty enjoyable, and you can maybe see why some people are comparing it to Nebbiolo, or maybe like a Bourgogne, soft Pinot Noir. Um, It's really a pleasant wine. Again, the food is almost imperative here. You got so much acidity and earth elements that if you drink a lot of wine, you might get some pleasure from this type of style. But if you don't drink a lot of wine, you might really need some food to have this uh, make you happy. I don't want to move too quickly. I feel like I've been saying too much. So, next one. This is a really nice step up in quality, moving off the $20 price point into something a little more artistic. Well, a lot more artistic, to be honest, because that first wine was made for the world. And then we go to a little guy named Carmelo Vecchio, who's been working with his hands as a cellar rat at one of the more important producers in the area called Pashko. I'm sorry, Paso Piscario. I'm not going to say it right. Paso Piscario. Yes, I got it out of my mouth. Paso Piscario. That is, that stuff is so great. Wow. And you kind of have to have been selling Paso Pescario for the past 15 years to get much of it. Really a hard wine to get your hands on. Pretty expensive. They're $100+ bottles of these wines. I was fortunate enough to order one off of a wine list in the restaurant, in a really nice restaurant. And when we were there, it was April of last year, and White Lotus had just finished, and things were raging. I had to like cut off the trip because I couldn't book any more guests because all the hotels were full. So we were a good sized group, but we were hoping for a few more, but we just couldn't get any more rooms. And so the group that was with us, we did a lot of nice dining and saw some of the major sites. And at this particularly amazing restaurant, we were able to sit down and have a bottle of Paso Pescario. So Carmelo worked there for 15 years and then started making wine on his own and inherited some 130-year-old vines from his wife's family, and little by little started to really build a reputation of his own. And now he's imported by Kermit Lynch. And by the way, that feature right there are rainbows coming out of every orifice of this island. Like every time we turn around, because it's 1 second it's beautiful skies, blue, blah blah, it's wonderful, sun drenched, and the next minute you got a cloud storm coming in and it's going to rain for 5 minutes. So rainbows are everywhere. And this is his humble abode. Jancis Robinson, 92 points. You'll find whiffs of both Burgundy and Barolo in the single vineyard bottling from vines planted in 1930. But it's the unmistakable Etna smoky and suave with radiant cherry fruit and gripping tannage and as fine as ash. So gripping tannins as fine as ash. Let's taste with Jancis Robinson and see what you think. You can see how the nose just all of a sudden went from something soft, maybe even like a cherry notion or red fruited notion. All that just went away. And you went straight to this terroir driven, very restrained, refined type of style. The mouth feels unique. This one may be a little bit more Barolo like than the first one. It's not quite as tannic as a Barolo, but it certainly has acidity. and it's really got, things like leather and leafy and black olive and a lot of that volcanic rocky minerality. I love the nose. Really beautiful, elegant, old world. Um, and apparently the volcano and the ash factor, and obviously, volcano is still erupting, so you might wake up with additional land, coming coming at you. And the the ash is building up every year, so more topsoil from the ash coming in, which is a unique feature. And you could say the Mount Etna wine growing area is really growing figuratively and literally every time that volcano gives off a little smoke. We're at $50 for the Casa Contrada 2019. And these wines are going up every single year. So as soon as I bring in the 2000 or 2001, it's probably going to be another $5 to $10 more each year. I'd say, realistically, within 5 to 10 years, we're looking at $100 wines from this producer. Um, the fact that he's small and artisan and has a great resume, gets some good scores, old vines, all those things check those boxes. Mm, love that. Love that. But if you're into fruit, that may not be your jam. And if that wasn't your jam, this next one probably won't be either, because we're going to a little different presentation. We're going to be tasting Calabretta. This is a nobility in Nerello Mascalese. The current vintage is 2014. This is their style. They make it, they bottle age it for us. And they have, long-term vision, old plans, 70, 80-year-old vine material. Been around for over 100 years. This is what they do. And it is brought in by a good importer called Rare Wine Company. This is going to really show you some advancement, some development. The nose immediately smells much different because of that age, 10 years. Okay. Prepare. The saltiness in this one really lifts it for me. I love that saltiness, the dried fruits, that focus on that olive notion. These wines are unfined, unfiltered, for the most part, unprotected, natural, old vines. And it's like tobacco leaf, old books, leather library. We had this wine at a dinner, staying at Tenuta Terranere. Really a beautiful agrotismo, and it was a great meal. And we needed a great bottle of wine. And when you're pairing, a great chef's effort to be able to taste something with some age on it, some character, this is it. And this wine may be a little underpriced for what it is. I'm not sure if they maybe make too much wine to be able to charge a lot of money, or maybe they just haven't created enough high-end customers to follow these wines up into the higher numbers. But I think of this with some nobility, and it's actually less expensive than the second wine. $35 as opposed to 50 for the other. I love the age character in this wine. I'm like, how much is it? I just would love to be able to turn people on that like mature, mushroomy, wet earth type of aromas and smells. It's not for everybody. It's a little divisive. Maybe you're sitting there going, that's not for me. I I'm it's hitting my yum button. I love this, and I think of it as super fun. But I have decided that my palate isn't exactly the same as my clients or anybody else that doesn't drink wine for a living. It's us people that drink wine every day for a living. We like weird stuff, and we know that. Before I just take a couple questions, let me just throw in a couple commercials, because coming down the pipe, we have a really cool tasting cold Cabernet. I'm showing some awesome wines, and it's going to be a limited audience. I think we could sell out any day because we're going to keep it pretty small, but this is top-notch stuff, and the producer list. Every time we do one of these, we try to change the producers at 100%. And we've done so for this next Colt Cab. You'll really appreciate who we're pouring. Coming down the pipe, we have this great Syrah. It's all California Syrah this time, but we're going to be going to some awesome top producers from different appellations, some different personalities, showing us some great Syrah. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night, everybody. Go Dodgers. Take care.